Creating a population pyramid or age-sex distribution graph. The convention is that you use percentages for males and females by age categories. Sometimes you'll see them as actual numbers, but in this case we are going to use the percentages. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to make the male numbers all negatives. So rather than going through and actually putting a minus sign everywhere, if you put a -1 in a cell, right click it and press copy, and then highlight all of those cells that you want to turn negative, right click on it and just click on the word paste special, and it gives you all of these options. And what we want to do is multiply all of those cells by the one that we copied. Click multiply, press OK, and amazingly it does it all for you. So you can get rid of the -1 now, you don't need it, because all of our data has been transformed into a negative number. Now I've just realised that there's an error here. We have some of our percentages in with 1 decimal place. This one has no decimal places, so we're just going to make sure that we are consistent. Okay, the next thing is that in our population pyramid, our axes with all of these age brackets actually needs to be in the centre of our graph. So to do this in Excel is a bit of a pain in the neck. We just go to the D column, right click, and we're going to insert. We're going to call this the word gap. And what we need to do is decide on a size or a width that's going to be appropriate for us to fit all that information in. Considering we are using percentages and they are quite low, we're just going to use the number 2. And of course, because we want that number all the way down, we can just make sure we've got the black cross and then click and drag all the way down, and it replicates that number. So we're now ready to graph our data. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to, probably the easiest thing would be to hide this cell, these cells where we're not going to use our numbers. Okay, so we've now got male percentage, gap, female percentage, and we've got all of our age groups. Okay, so once we've highlighted the data that we want to graph, we go up into Insert, we click on our bar or column graphs, and in this particular case we want a 2D stacked bar graph. Now, as you can see, our axis at the bottom is incorrect, and we've got our axes not in the centre anymore. So there are a few things to do. Get rid of your chart title. And now what we can do is we can remove the colour for this centre gap because we actually want it to be blank. So click on one and it should click on all of them. If you right click, you can choose fill to be none and outline to be none, and all of a sudden we have a gap which is available to us. Now we are going to move that over eventually, but just for now we want to get the rest of our bar graph or our population pyramid looking correct. So with our data rows, the first thing that we're going to do is click on one, it clicks on all of them, and as we right click, it allows us, right click, if we go into format our data series, it says to us, what do we want to do in terms of series overlap? Well, we don't want to overlap any of our numbers, but what we do want to do is we don't want to have any gap width, so we're going to make that 0. And now you can see it's looking a little bit more like a population pyramid. Okay, the other thing that we can do while we're here is that we can modify it so that we can actually see the outline of each of these. So in this particular case, it does it for the females. We can actually change that fill color if you want to make it consistent with the information that's above. And then for males, we can do exactly the same, a solid line border, and we'll change it to the other color that we've got in our Excel graph. So this just makes it a little bit easier for us to understand now. Now the other thing we want to do is actually move this into the center. So to do that, we are going to go add data labels, and we know that the data labels are going to be these two, but it allows us to change it. Okay, so while our data label has added in 2, we can change that to represent the age brackets. So when I click on those central numbers, We don't want value, we actually want category names. So we tick that first and then we untick value and we can see all of those age brackets. The next thing we just need to do is to delete that original axis. So click on it and press delete and it will be removed. Now we're going to add data values to each side of our graph to make it easier for the reader to see. So again, by clicking on one, we click on all of them. And it allows us then to go add data labels. We can see that our data labels are here. So again, click on the actual data labels themselves and it gives us formatting options. So our first formatting option is that we want to position them correctly. So in this case, we want them towards the end, inside end. And while we're here, we also want to reduce the font size down to about 7-point font to make it a little bit easier to read. We are going to do the same to the side for men, knowing that it is likely that our data values are going to come up as a negative, and we'll change those in a second. So again, we're going to go in, right click, add data labels. We get, click on the actual data labels again. We get the option of putting this time them in inside base. And we are going to reduce it down to 7-point font as well. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is change those from negative into positive. Okay, so let's change our male data values into positive numbers. So you click on the data value, again, right click so that we've got formatting. Now, at the moment, it may be selected as a general category. I want you to change it to number. And if you've got anything more than one decimal place, please change that to 1. Now, we have a few options here of what to do with a negative number. So the first thing is we want to turn it to a positive. And we can see when we click on that it should do that. But the problem is that it is red. And what we want it to do is to change it to black. So we're going to click on that, we're going to go add, and we can see that it's changed all of those numbers. Now I'm actually just going to double click on the 0.4 and just move it across a little bit because it's quite inappropriately located. So that way it makes it a little bit easier. You could actually put it just on the outside of that bar again. Okay, our next step is that we are going to play around with this axis. So before we change the axis, we need to get rid of this word gap, which is in here. So by double clicking on it, it selects just that element of our legend, and we can go into the Home tab and we can change the color to white, fill, and white text, and essentially it gets hidden as a consequence of that. The other thing you can do if you wish to is to get rid of these horizontal bars. I don't tend to like doing that. And the reason for that is that it changes our understanding of the information that's below. Now, there are a few things that we can do here to change the x-axis. Okay, so we're now in a position where everything is looking pretty good except for this bottom x-axis. Now, it's quite a convoluted way of fixing this correctly. For now, we're just going to delete that axis. And if you insert a text box, make sure that it's no fill on the outside, no fill and no outline. And then make sure that the numbers align up with each of those markers. And I've just realised I've got a line around it, so we make no line. And we've now got our completed population pyramid. Go and try that on your own.